Hey y'all, it's Evan with Backwoods Adventure Mods. Today we have a newly redesigned transit rear bumper. This is our Nomad series aluminum non-swing out step bumper. It's been redesigned so that it works with the vans with parking sensors and blind spot assist. It fits all the vans from 2015 to current, not just the 2020 and up. Today we're installing it on a 2021 all-wheel drive transit. When you open the box, you'll see the bumper, the mounting brackets, mounting hardware, tread plates. If you have parking sensors, you'll receive the parking sensor housings. If not, we have a delete plug, which I'll show you later in the video. If you have the blind spot assist, you'll get our blind spot assist bracket. If not, you can install the delete plate. The first thing we're going to do is drop the spare tire and get it out of the way. It's not totally necessary, but it makes it a lot easier to access the bolts. You'll have some type of cover, most likely either a little rubber plug or a plastic flip cover over it, and it just accepts a 1/2 inch square drive. Next, we're going to remove the plastic bumper cover. You just need a trim tool and a T25 Torx. Okay, under here we use the trim tool to pop out these little plastic push rivets. Also, while you're under here is a good time to go ahead and disconnect the wiring harness, if it has one. So I forgot to disconnect the parking sensor harness for the center section. It's right here on the passenger side. It's clipped in right under the taillight. In order to get it out, we're going to open up or shut the door just a little bit. There we go. So next, we're going to drop the hitch and what passes for a bumper. Before we can pull the bumper off, we need to remove the wiring harness from it. Okay, now we'll pull the hitch and bumper. Before we pull the hitch, we want to unplug the wiring harness from this trailer connector. I've already done it, but I brought it down here so you can see it. There's just a tab you push, kind of on the upper side, and then unclip the little tabs that hold it on from the rest of the hitch. You'll need a 13mm socket, a 15mm socket, and an 18mm wrench. I'm leaving one in there just for safety, so it doesn't fall on me when I take the last bolt out. This is the last bolt that holds it up, so I'm going to get out from under it. Now I'm going to let it swing down because I still have those bolts in. Okay, we're going to relocate this trailer plug into the bumper. So we're going to take it out of this little bracket, and then we're going to cut this little bracket off the hitch. You just squeeze the tabs at the top and bottom, and it should come out the front. Cut this bracket off. I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, the grinder with a cutoff wheel. All right, we're going to hit this with a little black paint. We're running out of time for the day, so we're going to let this dry overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and finish the install. Okay, with the hitch out, the last step for removal is taking off this bumper thing. It's a 13mm socket. I'm going to leave that one partially in there. All right, guys, we're back. The Paint's dry, we've got all our parts laid out, we're ready to put this on. Before we actually install the bumper on the vehicle, we'll go ahead and install the sensor housings and sensors and any other little accessories that go along with it. Have the end cap for the passenger side in OEM plastic. We're going to start by taking out the blind spot assist sensor as well as the parking sensor. Now, as I mentioned, you want to pay special attention to which way the sensor is facing and make sure also that you put the same sensor in the same location. So this is the passenger side outermost sensor, and its wiring clip is facing towards the outside of the vehicle. So we're going to note that as we take it off. To take this sensor out, you pry the top and bottom tabs outward and push inward from the outside of the bumper. To get the blind spot sensor out, it's a T20 Torx, 2 of them, and it just lifts out. We've got a couple clip still holding the wiring harness to the plastic that we're going to pop off. That should do it. Okay, next we'll take the two sensors out of the center section. You'll note I've got the outer sensors laid on the floor next to the new bumper, just like they were in the old bumper, so I know exactly how to put them back in. To take these two sensors out, it's the same. Just pry the tabs outward and push up on the sensor. Then remove the clips holding the wiring harness to the inside of the bumper. And we'll do the same thing on the driver's side outer. Okay, now we're going to install all the little accessories into the bumper. We're going to install the tread plates on top. We'll snap in the trailer wiring plug. For the parking sensors, if you don't have the sensors, you're going to use the included deletes, which actually give it the appearance of having a parking sensor. They install into the hole. There's a machined lip to keep it centered. Then from the back side, you'll install the fender washer, the lock washer, and the nut. We do have the sensors, so we're going to use the included sensor housings. The two ribs here line up with the two notches. They just snap in from the outside. Then the parking sensor snaps into the housing from the inside. The blind spot sensor, if you have it, the two tabs on the top of the sensor line up with these two holes to hold it in place, and then the screws that we include go into the two holes to secure it in place. It installs from the inside out with 4 included bolts. All right, so we just noticed something interesting. In previous installs, we've had all 6 parking sensors. This van actually has 4 instead of 6. So I'm assuming it's a package issue. This van, for whatever reason, didn't have the outermost sensor. So we're gonna use one of the deletes in the outer location. Okay, we have the bumper all assembled, ready to install. We're going to start by putting the frame brackets loosely on the frame. We'll kind of get everything centered. Then we'll install the hitch, tighten that down, and then we'll put the bumper on the brackets. These longest bolts in the hardware kit go through the side of the frame rail. They're gonna simultaneously hold the brackets and the hitch. The smallest bolts go up through the bracket up into the subframe. These largest bolts secure the hitch into the bottom of the bumper brackets, and this plate has the nut so you don't have to try to get a wrench in there. It slides into the bracket from the end. And then lastly, the 7/16 hardware and the connecting strip with the nuts, that's to install the bumper to the frame brackets. These upper four, we're just gonna leave loose for now. We're gonna leave the washers and nuts off of them because we're gonna need that to install the hitch later. We're gonna go ahead and tighten down these main four that hold it up to the subframe, and that's a 17mm socket. We're just gonna center it roughly front to back in the slots. And if we need to come back and adjust the entire bumper further rearward or forward, these are the 4 bolts that we use to do that before we tighten everything else back down. With the brackets on the frame, now it's time to hang the bumper on the brackets. You want the doors open for this step. These strips with the 2 nuts welded in, they go on the inside and use the bolt from the front side facing rearward. Before we tighten down any bolts, we want to make sure that the bumper is adjusted left to right. We're going to do that by carefully closing the doors, making sure there's no interference. Then we're just going to eyeball the gap on either side between the door and the bumper, and also how far the bumper sticks out beyond the body on each side. We want to keep the bumper as low as possible to make sure that the door doesn't come into contact with the tread plate or the bolts that hold it down. So right now we have between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch of a gap. So we're just going to raise it up just slightly as we tighten it down. Lastly, make sure that it's adjusted the same on the left and right side as far as height, the gap under the door. So I need to come up on this driver's side a little bit. Okay, I like that. We're going to go ahead and tighten down the bolts. Now that we have the bumper on and tight, we have it where we want it, left to right, up and down. Now, originally when I put the bumper brackets onto the frame, that's where we said we can adjust it fore and aft. And from purely a side view, we have it roughly about as far forward as this body line. On the other side, we don't. It's quite a bit further back. So I'm going to loosen those bolts so I can adjust this up where it needs to be. As you can see, it's nearly 3/4 of an inch further rearward compared to the other side. You want to loosen those 8 bolts just enough so that it takes a little bit of force to move the bumper. Okay, I like that. I'm going to tighten it down and then we'll put the hitch on. We're now completely done adjusting the bumper. All the bolts are tight. It's time to put the hitch on. So these 4 bolts per side that go through the frame, I have them pushed back out so that they're flush on the inside. That way we can put the hitch up into place and then push the bolts through one at a time. This is much easier with a helper and a jack, but it is doable if you're by yourself. Just be very careful because it's heavy. I'm going to push it up into place and get 1 bolt through each side, and then I'll pivot it up. I'm going to leave these loose until we've installed the last 4 bolts. Okay, everything's in. Time to tighten it down. The upper bolts are, they use a 19mm socket, and you'll need a 19mm backup wrench. The lower 2 bolts are actually SAE threads. They use a 3/4 inch wrench, but the 19mm is such a close fit that I'm just going to use it for all 6 on each side. Okay, we're going to route the wires, the OEM harnesses, and reconnect everything. So the main harness on the passenger side, we're going to route just on top of the bumper frame mount and run it over to the driver's side sensors. The harness for the middle two sensors, we're going to run back over to the passenger side. It plugs in there. Then we're going to connect the passenger side sensor to the harness. And lastly, we have the trailer wiring. We're going to route over the hitch and into the plug, which you can't see. So to make it easy, we're going to bring it out where we can see it, connect it, and then snap that back in. The last thing we have to do is cover up this with part of the original plastic. We're going to trim it right across here. So we're going to make a mark from this upper bend 5 inches down and draw a straight line from that mark over to the bottom of this cut. And find something for a straight edge. Most likely this will be a little bit long, and we'll come back and trim it. So it's almost there. I just want to fine tune this gap. It's a little bit larger at the back than it is the front. So I'm just going to make a note that I want to trim off about 1/8 of an inch on the front. Again, this will be different for every van depending on how your bumper's adjusted. Okay, that's got this wrapped up. It's not in the video, but I did zip tie up our wiring harnesses and I reinstalled the spare tire. So as a recap on this install, we started by removing all the plastic bumper stuff, all the wiring. We removed all that from the bumper, reinstalled those accessories in the new bumper. We cut the mount for the trailer plug off the hitch and painted it. Then we installed our mounts, installed our bumper, adjusted it, then installed the hitch and connected the accessories. And that's it. That's the install on our 2015 to current non-swing out Nomad Series Transit rear bumper. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any other questions, reach out to us at backwoodsadventuremods.com.